So let's look at how to derive IRR, which is just internal rate of return. And I'll use the question in 140. I don't know if it will be clear enough. Okay, so what I'll just give you the values because it's not that clear. So according to what I have, I have values like in the first year. This question, in the first year it had cash flows of 3,400. Then in the second year it had the cash flow of about 5,000. Okay, so these were the cash flows in the first and the second year, and it told us to use IRR to calculate if this project or investment was acceptable or not. So now using the IRR method, we'll have to calculate, and then the discount rate that they had given us in the question was 7%. So if the discount rate was 7%, we have to calculate IRR. Now IRR, to be specific, is the point at which NPV is equal to 0. So when NPV is equal to 0, then IRR has been satisfied. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to find IRR. We usually calculate IRR with trial and error. Okay, so for that question, if you look at these cash flows, okay, so now if you look at this cash flow, you have to be using rates that one rate will give you a positive number. And by the way, we also had 7,000, so this was the present value. When you invest the 7,000 into this business, in the first year you're going to get 3,500, and the second year you're going to get 5,000. So in this investment, if you put a 7,000, IRR will show you should you accept or not. So now, firstly, you must find a rate that will give you a 0, I mean a negative, and another rate it should give you positive. What do I mean? Let me just show you. In this case, I'll first get a 12% because I'm just trying out. Because if I use 10 and 12, they'll both give me a positive. How do you check? So how do you check? I'll use the net present value formula. So the net present value, let me use 12 if it will give me a positive or a negative. Remember that NPV is equal to, let me just use NPT, which is the future value. With this PT will stand for cash flows in this case. 1 plus R negative T, since we have 2 years cash flow, plus PT 1 plus R over negative T. But remember, you have an investment, so you're going to make an investment which will give you an I. So that is the formula. So we are saying we're doing a trial and error. So the first thing that I'll get is, the first rate that I'll have is 12%. Let me use 12%. So if I use 12% in this formula, we said NPV, and my first cash flow is 3,500, open brackets, 1 plus, what is 12%? What is 12 divided by 100? Is automatically 0.12. What is my T? It's 1, so negative 1, plus, I have a 5,000, open brackets, 1 plus 0.12. Then this cash flow comes into my business in the second year. That's what they're telling me. So then minus the 7,000. What am I going to have there when you punch on your calculator? So when you punch on a calculator, the 12%, when you punch on the calculator, you get a positive 21.68. So this one has given me a positive. So now I'll use at least another rate that is closer to 12%, something like 14%. Why am I using 14%? I have to be strategic when choosing. Okay, so I'll choose 14%. So if I'm choosing 14%, then what I'm going to do next, so let's get that number and keep it. So let me use 14%. So 14%, remember that our NPV, I'll still use 3,400. Remember, what is 14 divided by 100? I'll use 1 plus 0.14. This was in my first year, -1, plus 5,000, 1 plus 0.14 to the power -2 minus 7,000. What is this answer giving me? It will give me a negative figure. Okay, so it will give me a negative figure. Then this negative figure will be -170.21. So now, the trick here is that I just chose rates. It's now you to estimate your rates. So my rates that I've used, one should give me a positive and one should give me a negative NPV. And 12% and 14% is my NPV. Another tip that you have to know is that at the end of the day, my answer, my IRR should be in between. So now I'll go to my, I'll check for the rates and NPV that I got. I have, for 14%, I have a negative, and in this case I have a -170, and this is my NPV. And for 12%, I have 21.68. So I have these two. And remember that formula for finding IRR is R1 times NPV2 minus R2 times NPV1 over NPV2 minus NPV1. Or we can use this formula. IRR is equal to R1. Let me just write that. R2 times NPV1 minus R1 times NPV2 over NPV1 minus NPV2. Now if you check, my NPV1 came first and it's here. So you just follow what came first and you place it there. So I have my R1 and my R2. I have my NPV1 and my NPV2. So the only thing that I have to do now is to replace. So if I have to replace in this formula, what am I going to do? I have my IRR is equal to, what was my R2? My R2 was 0.14. I'll multiply it with my NPV2, which is 21.68. Then I have a subtraction. What was my R1? My R1 was 0.12 times my NPV1 was, rather my NPV2 was -170.21. Okay, over, what was my NPV1? My NPV1 was 21.68 minus -170.21. If you punch everything on your calculator correctly, your IRR should now be equal to 12.2%. You can leave it to 2 decimal places or 1 decimal place, but at the end of the day, your IRR should be in between 12% and 14%. Now, if you want to prove that this 12% will give your NPV as equal to 0, what you have to do is that write your NPV formula to check your answer if it's correct. NPV formula, and we know that NPV formula is PT 1 plus R, okay, negative 1 plus PT 1 plus R, negative 2 minus I. When you fuse everything that we did at first, your NPV must be 0. If not, then you've been doing wrong things, and in this case our NPV is equal to 0. I hope this video will be helpful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel.